What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. Today I'm excited to share a brand new rig from Core Tackle, the Shimmy Rig. It causes worms and minnows to vibrate on the fall and is an absolute fish catcher. Let's get into it.
Today I'm on Beaver Lake in Arkansas. It's early April and the lake just came up about 6 feet in a week. This brought dirty water into the fishery, and with water temperatures in the mid to high 50s, I felt like my best bet was to head to the cleanest water I could find on the lower end and locate some pre-spawn smallmouth.
Got a good one right here on the Shimmy Rig. That's what I'm talking about, guys. New bait here from Core Tackle. I'm finally able to talk about. I've been throwing it for about 6 months now. Just fishing for some smallmouth bass out here on Beaver Lake. Not a big one to start the day here, but just a nice little fish. Choke that thing right there. Look at that. Beautiful smallmouth bass. Got that Shimmy Rig down his throat. Just throwing it with a 4 1/4 inch max scent flatworm. That thing choked it. There's that Shimmy Rig right there. Awesome little rig. We'll talk a little bit more about it here. Nice fish. Not a big one to start the day, but a beautiful fish. I love catching smallmouth. There we go, guys, on the Shimmy Rig. This is a pretty unique contraption we designed at Core Tackle. The idea is that the weight is placed below your soft plastic bait to give it a shimmying action on the fall. I'll put some underwater footage here to show you what this bait looks like. And it works great on any type of worms or straight tail minnow style baits. And it gives it that really interesting wobble or shimmy on the fall. And right now I'm just fishing a rounded point here on the lower end of Beaver Lake, and there's some pre-spawn smallmouth that like to pull up on these types of points. And basically all I'm trying to do is get that Shimmy Rig down in the area where those smallmouth are. A Shimmy Rig for me is a great replacement for either like a Ned rig, a shaky head, a drop shot, any of those finessier approaches. Though I have caught them as well with some bigger soft plastics on there, kind of imitating a blade bait or a flutter spoon, all kinds of different things you can do with this rig. Right now I'm just throwing the 3/0 1/4 ounce size, which is a little bit smaller hook for these finessier baits. And the way I basically fish is let that thing sink down the bottom, and then I lift the bait up with my rod and let it fall back down to the bottom. The idea is that you want to get that bait to actually come up off the bottom and fall back down to get that shimmying motion. So if you are just dragging it on the bottom, it can also work. That weight being below the bait actually helps keep it out of the rocks pretty well. So if you just want to drag it, you can, like a Carolina rig or a football jig. But I feel like the way you get the most out of this bait is by lifting the bait up like you would fish a blade bait, or like maybe if you had a lipless crankbait down the bottom, pull that bait up and then let it shimmy down on the fall. And the bass absolutely can't resist it. It's just something they haven't seen before, and I've been catching a pile of fish on it over the past 6 months. Got him. There we go. Good one here. Another fish on the Shimmy. Don't know how big this one is. Off another rounded point here. Another just nice little smallmouth right here. Nothing crazy. Just another good one. Nice fish right there. Look at that guy. That's actually a pretty good Beaver Lake bass. That's a solid keeper out here on Beaver. That's what I'm talking about, guys. I switched it up a little bit on that Shimmy because that little tiny flatworm was a little bit too light with the wind and how deep these fish are. So I actually went to the 5/0 3/8 ounce Shimmy Rig and put a striking menace grub on so that those tails were basically in line with that weight. And that actually shimmies on the fall too, and that tail kicks. And that is a really nice smallmouth out here on Beaver. Beautiful fish. There we go, guys. Absolutely gorgeous smallmouth bass right there. Gotta love it. There we go, guys. And that just shows you how versatile this Shimmy Rig is. That little menace grub on there is a sweet little setup. I've caught a lot of fish actually doing this. And that 3/8 ounce size is better when I'm fishing out here in this like 20+ foot of water range. And that menace grub on there just has a really nice, again, shimmy, but it also has a swimming action to it. It's awesome. I'm just bombing it out here again on one of these rounded points. The fish are staging up to spawn around these points, and I'm just kind of working with my mapping. I have no forward-facing sonar right now. It's literally all just mapping, and I'm just following the contour lines where they start to get a little bit steeper and then flatten out here. And I'll show you on some mapping what it looks like. And I'm just following these contour lines on these points, throwing this bait down there, and I'm basically working it right now almost like I would a blade bait. So again, basically letting that bait fall down to the bottom, and then I'm just kind of pumping it, raising it, letting it fall, and letting that bait shimmy and just swim. And it swims a little bit forward while it shimmies with this menace grub, and it's just a sweet little combo. And I catch fish on all kinds of baits with this shimmy rig, and I've experimented with a bunch of different stuff. I like to throw a straight tail minnow, especially like in the fall. When I actually first took it out here on Beaver Lake last September, I caught a pile of fish and some really good ones. That was actually with forward-facing sonar, just using it almost like a Demiki rig, dropping it on the fish. And then later in the year, I started dragging it like this with some different cross-style baits and using it as a crawfish imitator. You can also put a swim bait on it. There's so much you can do with this rig, and it comes through rock and through cover so well because that weight keeps that hook point up, and it causes that bait to just glide around, and you can fish it even on the bottom without getting hung up, even though it doesn't have a weed guard. Got him. There we go. Good one. Out here on the shimmy. Feels actually like a good fish. I could be getting fooled, but this feels like a good one. Stay on there, fish. He's kind of swimming at me, so it's hard to tell. Come on, be a good smallie. Oh, nice one. Not huge, but just another nice fish. I thought he was actually bigger than the last one, the way he ate that thing. But goodness, that is another nice keeper right there. Absolutely choked that shimmy rig. Just moved to another rounded point here, guys. Nothing crazy. I'm actually just following contour lines. I'm not graphing these spots beforehand or anything. And he ate that rig, though. It's hard to even get the hook out of him. Give me a second here. There we go, got that hook out. Beautiful smallmouth. Not the biggest fish in the lake. We are fishing Beaver Lake, so you're not always gonna have giants, but they're just gorgeous fish out here. All on that shimmy rig, guys. And this rig, I feel like, is a great tool for not only targeting these fish in a finessey way, but when you go up to this heavier size, it can be a great way to cover some water as well, with a little bit different look or a different approach. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the shimmy rig. This is a bait that we designed and been prototyping since last summer, and the concept is very similar to the Ozark rig. Our Ozark rig causes soft plastic worms to wobble on the fall, and I tried to figure out a way to make that work with an open hook presentation. The way we did that is by putting a wire with some lead on it underneath a 90-degree jig hook. This causes worms and minnows to wobble on the fall. You can see today that I was catching fish on a variety of baits, and it works great with a bunch of different things. One of my favorite baits is this little 4 1/4 inch flatworm from Berkeley. It works great as an alternative to a drop shot, a Ned rig, and a shaky head, but it gives those fish a different look and motion that they haven't seen before. And today we were in 10 foot of water visibility, ultra clear water, north winds, bluebird sky day. Not the best fishing conditions, and despite that, these fish were choking the shimmy rig. You may be put off initially by having that wire and that lead outside the bait, but trust me, it doesn't make any difference to the fish. They eat it just as well as any other rig. And I actually had to stop throwing this rig about midway through the fall last year because I was catching so many fish on it and had all these fish catches on the shimmy rig and not on any other baits. And I couldn't show the footage, so I put it away basically until this fishing trip. And this is the first time I've thrown it in a while, and we caught him right off the bat in just a couple of hours. Now this is the 3/3/16 ounce size in that Berkeley 4 1/4 inch flatworm, but there are other sizes as well. Another one of my favorites is the 5/3/8 ounce size. This is paired up with that menace grub that I caught a few fish on today as well. This menace grub is the perfect shape to make that shimmy rig cause it to wobble on the fall, as long as you rig it with the tails vertical rather than horizontal. Pretty much any worm-shaped bait or minnow-shaped bait will wobble on the fall as long as you get the right weight and hook size combination. If you have too much weight for certain baits, it won't really shimmy, or if there's too little weight. So you have to experiment with the different sizes of the shimmy rig. I would actually recommend picking up one of each of the sizes. There's 4 different sizes, and experiment with your favorite worm and minnow style baits to see which size causes it to have that shimmying motion. Another bait that I've had a lot of success with, and actually was the bait I started throwing on the Shimmy Rig, is the Hog Farmer Stroll Shad. This is the 4-inch Stroll Shad on the 3/0 3/16 ounce Shimmy Rig, and it shimmies great in the water. The first time I took this to Beaver Lake, as I think I mentioned earlier, I cracked them. I caught a 4-pounder, a 3.5 pounder, a 2.5 pounder, and on Beaver Lake, those are really good quality fish, especially in the middle of September. In that situation, I was actually using forward-facing sonar, but today I wasn't using forward-facing sonar at all, and this is just such a versatile rig that you can catch them in both ways with this rig. Another kind of sneaky way that I've been experimenting with this rig a little bit is adding a blade. One thing about this Shimmy Rig design is that the wire has a loop on the end, which allows you to put a little blade or a stinger hook. If you are fishing this in open water, you could put a little treble hook on here. You have that stinger so that if those fish short strike your bait, you can still get them in the boat. But then you can also add this blade, and it basically acts as an underspin. When you cast that thing out and reel it in, it will basically go through the water just like an underspin. But one thing I actually like about this is that it doesn't have a perfectly uniform action, because that blade will sometimes hit the tail of your minnow, causing it to have some erratic motion. And this random motion, or this random movement, a lot of times is what triggers bites. And a lot of times when I'm fishing a crankbait or a spinnerbait, I might be reeling that bait in and purposely pause my reel handle or twitch my rod to get that bait to kind of have a unique movement. But this little underspin setup hits that tail and kind of creates that random motion by itself, which I found triggers some really nice bites. I have thrown this with both these straight tail minnows like that Hog Farmer Stroll Shad, or a paddle tail swim bait, and it works great with both of those. The 5-inch Hog Farmer Stroll Shad works great in that 5/0 size, especially the 5/0 quarter and 5/0 3/8 ounce Shimmy Rig. This is the best straight tail minnow I found with it. So you can use a lot of different straight tail minnows on this rig and get that shimmying fall, which is, again, just super unique. And on Beaver Lake, where I fish here a lot, it's really important to me to have a rig that is different from what everyone else is throwing. You can go through a lot of these areas and fish behind someone over and over, and there's actually 2 of the points I fished today that a boat just left. I pulled in right afterwards and caught a fish on the Shimmy Rig, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of boat pressure in the spring out here, and so having something that is different from when the other anglers are fishing is a huge confidence booster for me. And it's such a versatile rig that I feel confident I can throw it in so many different scenarios: up shallow, out deep, with a crawfish imitator, a baitfish imitator, so many different things to experiment with. And honestly, I feel like I haven't thrown it nearly enough, just because I've had to put it away, because again, I threw it for like a month straight, and I was catching them every fishing trip in any way you could imagine, and I'm like, I just have to put it down until we launch this thing. So I'm excited to kind of start experimenting with this with you guys, and would love to hear your feedback down in the comments. Once you pick one of these up, maybe come back to this video and just leave a comment letting me know what you think of the Shimmy Rig. I'm excited to try it in the post spawn here as we get some fish out on some deeper ledges. I'm also excited to maybe put that underspin variation on and fish it just around some shallow banks and the shad spawn scenarios, around shallow bushes. There's all kinds of stuff I can think about doing with this rig, and I'm sure there's a lot of other ways that you guys might be thinking about throwing it as well. So definitely try the new Shimmy Rig from Core Tackle. This is probably one of my favorite baits or rigs from Core Tackle now, just because of how versatile it is and how many fish I've caught on it in the short amount of time I've thrown it. So definitely pick them up. They're available right now over at coretackle.com. They'll also be coming to retailers near you relatively soon, but I think for the first few weeks here, you probably can only pick up at Core Tackle. So definitely check it out before they're sold out. We don't have a ton in stock, and let me know again what you think. Thanks for checking out this video, guys. We'll see you on the next one.